you see a relationship between data lakehouse using open table format like Delta and Data Vault? And if so, what's the relationship?
That's a very good question. Uh, uh, I'm going to ask or relay a similar question that comes through quite often. Will Data Vault work, or will Data Vault work on technology X or Y or platform X or Y, whatever the case may be? And I always come back and say, as long as the platform or technology supports the analytical workload,
Mm.
not Data Vault, but the analytical workload. Can you join? Can you find? Can you integrate? Can you make it appropriately available? Do you have ways or mechanisms to facilitate the functions, the leads, the lags, the table-based functions, your recursive, your hierarchy management, recursive CTs? So the question really then comes up: does your technology support all of those features and functions? And if they do, happy days, you have a solution. To a bit more specifically on the lake house and the delta lake and all those type of components, do they deliver on some of the features that we need for the vault? Absolutely they do. Do they necessarily behave in all the same ways that we traditionally have done for a data vault? Sometimes, sometimes not. You will have to check on your technology as such. So, I mean, Michael and his team has done some fantastic work on some um, really interesting and challenging platforms in the past. It requires a deep knowledge of those platforms, but can it work? Sure, it can.
Mhm.
But here's the thing: our usual lake house kind of functionality does well with the delta detection. That's typically well established and so on. Does it do very well with the integration? And unfortunately, unless there's a conscious design decision to drive out the integration around business keys and relationships, that doesn't necessarily happen. So that's the critical bit where Data Vault remains relevant irrespective of the technologies that are coming in play. Does some of them make it a lot simpler and easier to do? Absolutely. And so leverage those, please do. But do not forget, we are dealing with information, and information don't care what technology you run. The principles, the building blocks of information management
Yep.
remains uh, immutable in the situation. So we need to deal with the fundamental requirements, integration by business key, the facts in their time context. Those things are immutably required. So can we use a lake house? Can we use the other import or popular terms out there, the medallion architecture, etc.? Absolutely. Those type of architectures have been supported by Data Vault since day dot. So things like medallion architectures, where the separation between raw and derived data becomes a bit more pronounced, a bit more defined, is fantastic. We call it raw vault and business vault. Um, and so they may go from bronze and silver or silver to gold, whatever mechanism they or whichever pattern of these medallions are being discussed in time. But the bottom line is those principles, those architectural principles, do play out well. And that's fantastic news because at last the industry is catching up to where Data Vault's been for quite some while. Sorry for being somewhat
Absolutely.
biased in that opinion, but there you go.
No, I love it.
No, it's, one comment or longer comment. The keyword for me was principles. I was just jumping in, but I said, okay, let's let's leave notes to talk out. The thing is this: we teach data vaults in a training always on relational database. So we have hub-sync satellites, and we discuss all these special entity types and so on, joining them for dimensions and so on. That's all good, but how the data vault looks like on the implementation wise really depends on the platform. But I think, so give you an example. Let's go for some extremes. I truly believe, I've never tried it, you could build a data vault in an Excel sheet, in a spreadsheet. Should work. Never tried this. I don't recommend this, just saying, but it should work. But we could also look at some other extreme databases like, for example, MongoDB. MongoDB is not a relational database. It's a document store. So it deals really with with documents, JSON documents in a collection, essentially. That's it. There's no relation or table or something. And when you look at how a data vault looks like on a MongoDB, we have collections for hubs and links, but not for satellites. I leave it open how it works out. There's a blog series on our blog where we describe essentially how to build a data vault on a MongoDB. But it was quite an interesting challenge because it's completely different. What you realize, though, is there are satellites. The concept of the satellites, the principle, still remains. So we have that. Data vault is in the first step. It's not about hubsing satellites. It's about business keys, relationships between business keys, and descriptive data. Those are the core concepts, essentially. And then how we implement this using hub link satellites depends on the technology that we're using. If it's an Excel or a relation database, on a MongoDB, JSON collection, and so on. But the principles remain the same. And those principles, they meet your requirements. Because I agree with Nols, if you have a different solution, go for it. If it's sufficient, meeting your requirements. So if you, in some cases, seriously, in some real-time cases, we just dump the data in the feed. There was no integration. We just aggregate the data and we were done. If that's sufficient, if that's the requirement, so be it. That's one of the few projects where I didn't use Data Vault, where I actually recommended the client not to use Data Vault because they just want to aggregate some data. If that's your goal on the Delta Lake, go for it. Just dump the data, aggregate it. But if you have more requirements than that, maybe you have to delete records. You have to integrate data from different source systems. The principles from Data Vault, they are still valid on any platform because they are related to your data, not to your platform. And the only thing is the Data Vault on a data lake, Cloudera, Databricks, whatever, would be a bit, or looks different to a relational database. For example, the joining performance is typically lower, not because it's a data lake, but because we often use column-based storage, which is also true for Redshift, for other databases. In this case, you want to avoid joins on high volume because they will not perform. And that's why we essentially rely on bridge tables where we denormalize data, rely on avoiding satellite splits if we can. If there's no requirement for it, we avoid them, right? And so on. That's the basic idea. But the principle is the same. That's the keyword here.
So I think obviously the principles of Data Vault have always applied to multiple technologies.
Yep.
I have a feeling this question's come about because obviously I watch what other vendors are saying and what other consultancies are saying, and there's certainly a big shift towards Lakehouse as a I guess a newer way to apply what used to be the combination of a data lake and a data warehouse together. So now it's kind of all in one platform. And we've certainly heard people represent that this medallion architecture is an alternative way to organize your information, an alternative to Data Vault or what have you. And I think the what we're saying here is it's not. It's an architecture. Obviously, Data Vault has 3 layers anyway, so the architecture and the model and the methodology components. The Data Vault will fit into that medallion architecture perfectly, and it'll actually work.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, Data Vault's always been a 3-layered architecture, and so the fact that medallion architecture is a 3-layered architecture that defines, raw, curated, and the delivery data aligns
Mm-hmm.
perfectly. So, I'd certainly say that you not only can you do it, but it's actually going to work well. Is I think the message. So, I think we've wrapped up that question. Any other thoughts, Nols or Michael?
I just posted a article we wrote on the Microsoft Tech community on Databricks, where we also have a diagram how the medallion architecture fits essentially or Data Vault fits into the medallion architecture of Databricks.
I've seen that one. Yeah, it's a great article. Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Thanks.
We'll make sure that's in the feed in DVIC. So really good point, Michael. If you're watching this right now and you're not a member of the Data Vault Innovators community, it's free to join. Jump on, sign up, and you can access not only these sorts of sessions, but lots of additional content, case studies where you can hear from actual people using Data Vault, and then, as Michael said, lots of articles and knowledge, knowledge base, and even reach out to these guys and ask a question through that. So